You're listening to Brandon Sports Talk, interviewing professional athletes and Paralympians and Olympians. And now for your professional athlete interview and your host, Brandon P.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the USA rowing Olympian Regina Salmons. How are you doing today?
Good. Hi, Brandon. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get into professional rowing?
Yeah, it definitely was something that I never kind of knew from the get-go, but one of those things where I really just loved the sport from the second I got into the boat. And it was something where I never really wanted to stop doing it. And I was just kind of lucky enough that as I got older, I was like, oh, this is still feasible. This is great. And so I'm really lucky that I've been, in positions where I've had the opportunity to keep continuing with sport. Yeah.
What was that like going to the University of Penn and competing in rowing?
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible. So Philadelphia has this great stretch of water on the Schuylkill River called Boathouse Row, and there are all these boathouses that were built in the 1800s, and they're just it's absolutely picturesque. And rowing for Penn was incredible. And it was really special because I went there when we had a new head coach, Wes Eng. And so it was the very beginning of kind of the program turning around from being, more of a fun and experience oriented college program, and turned into, by our senior year, we were medaling at our conference, in the Ivy League conference. So, and now last year they got, they crushed it at NCAAs. So it was a really exciting time to be part of the program.
During your time at the University of Penn, what were some of your biggest accomplishments?
Oh, like I just said, our senior year, my senior year, we got third at Ivy League championships, and it was the first time that Penn had medaled since 1980. So it was the first time we had medaled in over 30 years, and it was an incredibly special moment. There's you just look up to the sky and you just can't stop smiling, you're smiling and crying. And it was just really special because being the underdogs for so long, to finally have that little bit of victory just kind of meant so much more. Even because people are like, oh, it was just third place, but after my freshman year we had gotten seventh at Ivies, so to go from seventh my freshman year to third by my senior year, it was a really, really special moment with my teammates.
What was it feeling like getting to represent Penn and getting to put on that uniform for them?
Oh, it was really great. Because Penn has one of the longest traditions of collegiate rowing, and it's incredibly special to be part of that kind of legacy and that history. People have been rowing, at Penn since the 1860s. So, just to be, and then now to watch the next generation of girls go out there and crush it. Just extremely proud to be part of such a vibrant community of really strong and exceptional athletes.
Of course, after your collegiate time, what was it like getting into the Team USA rowing?
Yeah, it was kind of it's always a culture shock when you graduate college, no matter whether you were an athlete or whether you weren't, that's always just kind of a crazy transition. And it was definitely kind of an extra layer on top of that. So I've been at the Princeton Olympic Training Center since I graduated in 2018. And that's not always normal. Sometimes women or men will take a couple years to train at a club rowing team or, work for a little bit, but I went directly into the pipeline. And it was at that time, the training center was huge. We had about 45 women. And so it was like one of those things where like there were some women who like didn't talk to me for like weeks, or like, you know, the coach didn't really like talk to me for a while, and you're just kind of like put your head down and like just go to work. And but it was also incredibly exciting because, you know, in college, you know, and I loved Penn academically. It was a great fit for me. But you know, after being so academic, because while I was in college, academics was my first priority, not athletics. So then once graduating, it was kind of like this, like, oh wow, like this is all I have to do. Like this is so fun. Like, you know, there's no classes. Like I just wake up, I go row, I take a nap, and then I go row again. And so that was like kind of really exciting at first. And then I was also like, oh my God, I can sleep. So like coming to the training center, I was like, this is what 9 hours of sleep a night is like. And I swear I got faster in that first month of being at the training center just because I had like a full night of sleep. And so that's also a piece of advice for like younger athletes, is do not underestimate the power of sleep. It is very good for you. You'll feel better.
Of course, in 2018, what was it like getting to compete for the first time in the World Championship?
Oh, so in 2016 was my first World Championships on the under 23 team. And that was really special because I hadn't made the junior national team the 2 years prior. So making the under 23 team in 2016 was like a very special moment because of that. And I was lucky enough to compete in 2 boats. And it was just so exciting, you know, to go overseas and just like race your heart out, you know. It's just it was that year too was an exceptional group of women. We won in both the 4 and the 8, and we had actually set a world record in the 4 that year because the wind was crazy. It was like this crazy fast tailwind, and it was just like you just had to go with it. You're like, all right, like we're buckle up, we're going. And so like for that to be my first taste of kind of like the national team for me was really awesome. It was really awesome, and it's kind of set like this kind of great tone for the rest of my career.
How has it been like, obviously competing in an eight person
Yeah.
sled, 8-person row versus obviously a 1-person row?
Yeah, so I rode in the single, which is the 1 person, my junior and senior year of high school. And I'm not exactly built for that, both physically or mentally. I have so much respect for all of the women and men who row singles. It takes a lot of mental dedication, but personally for me, I really prefer, you know, the bigger team boats where it's like you have this opportunity to pull for your teammates, be with your teammates, and like really the group effort is something really special to see like what you can accomplish as a group of people. So for me, there's something really magical about the 8 because, you know, it's kind of like the sum of all your parts, like you're greater than the sum of all your parts, like, you know, just multiplying off of each other and like building off of that energy is really special.
What was that experience like in 2019 competing in the World Rowing Cup?
Yeah, that was really exciting because that was kind of my first taste of the senior team. You know, I'd done under 23s in 2016, 2018, came straight to the training center. And then, so that was like, you know, a year after I graduate. And it was really great because it was kind of like, you know, the coach was taking, you know, a couple pairs, a couple 4s and 8. And it was like, we were kind of the 4 that had no expectations and like no pressure because we were 4 of the younger girls. Like he just wanted us to get like international race experiencing. You know, there was no pressure on us to medal or even make the A final. I think the coach was honestly surprised we made the A final, and he like didn't express that to us, but like it was like we finished the A final and he was like, okay, all right, like let's go. And we were like, yeah. um so that was really cool. And, you know, so at the time we were disappointed that we didn't medal because we got 4th, but like in retrospect, I was like really proud of that race because, you know, I was like 22 years old and just like going into it, just like, um, just totally just fearless. I sometimes, now that I'm older, I'm like, I gotta go back to that. I gotta get back to that like fearlessness, you know? So yeah, it was a great one.
Of course, going into the 2021 season, what was that like preparing to make it to the Olympics?
Yeah, so it was, I mean, I could talk about COVID and what COVID training is like. Honestly, super depressing. We had to row singles for about 6 months during COVID, and that was really tough because normally we all row with one oar each or sweep rowing, but during that time we had to row with 2 oars by yourself, obviously, which is a very different boat feel and very different kind of like application of power or pressure onto the oar. Um, so that was really difficult. But then we were able to get into team boats around November of 2020. And so we were able to row team boats from that point into the Olympics. But it was also really tough because the only competition we had was each other. You know, normally like you race at the World Cup, like as we did in 2019, prior to the World Championships or the Olympics. And we didn't have those opportunities. So prior to the Olympics, we never really had a chance to test our speed externally. So it was like kind of an incredible test of like perseverance to just be like so internally focused as a team at all times.
What was that feeling like when you got that announcement that you made the Olympic team to go to Tokyo?
Yeah, so it was like the selection process was quite arduous and quite long. It was a 3-week selection process. You know, we did erg testing, we did on the water pairs racing. So when there's 2 people in a boat, that way you kind of have a clear sense of ranking both on the water and off the water. And then, you know, starting to put some of those pairs combinations together in 4s and 8s. And, you know, in those 4s and 8s, we did 35 selection pieces. So over the course of 10 days, which was incredibly grueling. And they were 1,500-meter race pieces, and our Olympic distance is 2,000 meters. So, you know, that's essentially like doing 35 races, you know, one after another. And you never know if or when you're going to get switched. So it's like you really, not that anyone would be like, you know, slipping or off their A game, but it's like you really have to be focused and really give each piece 100%, because like that piece could be the piece that determines whether or not you're going to the Olympics. And you don't know when you're going to get switched. And so it just like really creates like a level of trust and integrity between your teammates, because you know that everyone is kind of pulling for themselves and pulling for everyone else at the same time, because everyone is looking to make the fastest combination possible in order to like set you up for the best chance of success at the Olympics.
What was that feeling like for you to get to make it to the Olympics, to go to Tokyo, to live out your Olympic dream?
Well, first of all, I kind of like had this anxiety that the Olympics wasn't even going to happen for a really long time because of COVID. So first of all, it was like, oh my God, the Olympics are still happening. Like, this is great. And then like, you know, getting that announcement, it was like, I had always pictured it as kind of like, you know, in the movies, they like put up a piece of paper on a bulletin board. So I'd always kind of like pictured that. But so for the last race piece, we had gone out in the 8 that ended up being the Olympic 8. And it had been for a couple of race pieces, but, you know, for the last one, because at a certain point they started selecting the 4, since the 8 was the priority boat. So they selected the 8 first and then started selecting the 4. But there was still kind of always that, like, I don't want to say threat, but like chance that they could still switch someone into the 8. So you weren't quite sure if they were done selecting the 8 or not. But, you know, on the day of selection, they were like, you know, the lineups that we just went out with, like, you've been approved by the selection committee, like you are the Olympic 8, like you are the Olympic 4. And we were all like kind of like, that's it? Like, yeah, okay, like this is for real. And then like once we were like, yeah, like this is for real, it was just like couldn't stop smiling, everyone hugs each other. It was really funny. I tried to call my dad and he didn't pick up on the first ring. I had to call him like 3 times and I was like, Dad, I made the Olympics. And he was like, yeah, I kind of figured you would. And I was like, no, Dad, like, come on, like, be excited. And he was, but it was like, it was really, that was also really special because, you know, you have like so much doubt as like a, as an aspiring athlete, like there's always these doubts and like these fears, but then to like call my dad and he was like, yeah, of course. And I was like, yeah. And it's like, it was just a really special moment.
What was that feeling like when you received your gear and you had the Olympic rings on your gear and you were wearing them in Tokyo?
Yeah. So funnily enough, the only gear that I have that actually has the Olympic rings on it is or I guess, okay, yeah. So none of the rowing specific gear has any of the Olympic rings on it, but all of like the USA team stuff does. And I'm not quite sure why that is, but like if you look at like any of the specific sports, like track and field or like any of the actual uniforms don't have the Olympic rings on them. It just says like USA or like whatever on them. But like all the stuff from Ralph Lauren and Nike, like those have the Olympic rings kind of like in a patch or kind of like more, yeah, it was good. But anyways, so it was really cool. It was really cool. It kind of felt like the best Christmas I've ever had of, you walk into your Olympic dorm room and like on the bed are the suitcases full of clothes. And so like you walk into the room and then there's just like these suitcases and you just like open them up and like, so there's the Nike one and the Ralph Lauren one and you're just like pulling stuff out of the suitcases and like unwrapping it from the plastic. It was a great feeling. And that's also different from normal Olympics because at normal Olympics, you normally go through a processing center, kind of like a giant Costco, where you like get each piece of gear individually so that it's sized correctly. But again, because of COVID, they just delivered all of our gear to our individual rooms kind of with like approximate sizing, oh, like I'm a size large. And so they just get you all size large gear. So everything isn't as perfectly tailored as it would have been during the normal Olympics, but I don't know. It was really fun to have a Christmas moment. Like, a Christmas moment was pretty cool too, even though like you didn't get to go like shopping through the USA Costco essentially, but I loved it.
Of course, what was that feeling like the first time you got to go onto the water at the Olympics and you started to row?
Oh, it was great. And it was really cool too and really special. We were really privileged as USA to be able to kind of have an expedited process getting through to Japan. Really, I also want to say really grateful for our relationship with Japan, an incredible host nation. The people are so kind and just so supportive and just like along the way, everything was so easy, even though the process was very complicated, if that makes sense. Like, very strict about COVID, which I very much appreciated how strict they were about COVID. I felt very safe. But again, because of the like privileges American athletes, we were able to get there a couple days earlier. And so we were actually one of the first countries on the water. And so it was like we were there totally by ourselves, which was really cool because, like as the Olympics progressed, more countries came, more sports came in, obviously, and it got busier. But to be there kind of like in those couple days before the competitions started, we were there about a week before competition started, or maybe even 10 days. So quite a bit of time. It was really special because like you sit on the water and it was like quiet. It was quiet. And like we got in the boat, we sat, it was a little quiet, and we are like, and then we started the practice and we're like, okay, yeah, like we're here. And then, as more people started coming in, it gets louder, more boats are on the water. You hear like different countries, like languages are flying around. But for those first few days, the quiet was really special, and it made the noise later also really special too.
What were some of your favorite memories and moments competing in the Olympics?
So one of my favorite moments was sitting on the starting line of the final because, with all of this anxiety about COVID, about injury, about everything, to actually, there was this huge anxiety for me about not even being able to compete because if you get one positive COVID test, you just don't compete. We took 21 COVID tests. So there was this kind of, I feel like, on the Olympic line, like people are like, oh, were you nervous? And it's like, yeah, of course, but I'm nervous at like every race. But like sitting on the Olympic line at the final, I felt this like huge sense of like release and just like relief of like, you made it, like you're here. No matter what happens in this final, like you got to compete, and that in itself is a really special experience. One of my mentors, John Chatsky, he was a 1980 Olympian who didn't get the chance to compete. And so I will never, ever take for granted just the opportunity just to get to sit on the line and represent the United States of America. It's like a very, very special honor that I really, yeah.
Being your first Olympics, were there any people that you looked up to and got advice from on how to represent yourself and compete at the Olympics?
Yeah, so three people who just like immediately jumped to mind. So our coxswain Caitlin Gergian and our seven seat Megan Musanicki were also in the 2016 women's eight who won. And so it was incredibly special to be in the boat with them because, they were the reigning Olympic champions, and just their level of dedication and attention to detail was something that for me as a younger athlete was incredibly helpful, because you don't know what you don't know as a younger athlete, and like constantly I was just asking them questions, and they were so diligent about answering all of my questions. And if I wasn't asking the right questions, they would be telling me the little things that I need to know. Slow down, take a breath, don't do anything differently than you normally do. Kind of these things that maybe seem obvious, but are really, really important when it actually comes down to the line. And then also to Karin Davies, who stroked the 2012 women's eight. She also has always been an incredible source of inspiration for me. And even though she didn't make the Tokyo team, being able to train with her and see her level of both confidence and humility and just general strength has always been inspiring. And, all of the women who I trained with, those who made the team and especially those who didn't, I am just like constantly in awe of their strength and their just kind of like constant diligence. So.
What was that feeling like for you after you got out of the Olympics and you got to add OLY to your last name?
Oh, very cool. Very cool. It's just kind of funny because a lot of my friends are actually PhDs. So we joke that I went to they got a doctor and I got an Ollie, 4 years later. I spent 4 years training to get an athletic degree and they got a PhD. So it's really cool. But, it's like, I got it's really special to kind of see that kind of like little, check mark and see like all of the hard work you do put in kind of come out a little bit. But I would do it all over again, even if I hadn't made the team. It was absolutely incredible.
What is it like, obviously, getting to meet your fans and having them ask for your autographs and photos with you?
Well, it was really sad. Okay, that's actually, I was really grateful that Head of the Charles, and I'd love to give a shout out to Head of the Charles for their support of the U.S. national team. Because that's kind of where I got that experience, because at Tokyo, there weren't any fans or spectators, like not even our families could come and watch. So that was really sad, to be competing at the Olympics to an empty stadium. But then the fall after and the year after fall after at the Head of the Charles, it was really great. You get to sit in a little booth and I love chatting with high schoolers. Like if anyone ever sees me, feel free to ask me a question or slide into my DMs. I'm happy to shoot the shoot about rowing anytime. So yeah, because when I was in high school, I actually got to meet Caitlin Gergian, our coxswain, at the Tokyo Olympics, and I have her signature on a trading card from 2013. And that for me is so cool, that someone that I met in high school who I really looked up to, and in Karin Davies and Moose too, who were also in the 2012 Olympic eight, there was a poster of them at our high school boathouse. And so for me, these women that I looked up to when I was in high school eventually became my teammates. And so I love meeting high school and younger athletes or college athletes, because I just love for kids to have the same experience that I did.
Of course, after the Olympics and coming back home, what was that feeling like when you got to receive your ring and you had the Olympic rings and the U.S. flag on them?
The ring came a couple months later, which was really kind of great because, you get all of this gear at the Olympics and it's pretty overwhelming and you're like, like in a really cool way. But the ring came a couple months later when everything had kind of died down. And that was really special because, you know, a lot of women and men have like, you know, NCAA rings or conference rings. And this was kind of like the first sports ring that I've ever gotten. And so that was like also incredibly special that it was an Olympics one. And so I really cherish it. I really cherish it a lot.
Who are some of the athletes that you look up to as a rower?
Mm. Yeah, so I guess I've talked a lot about those three. When I was younger, I was really really into figure skating, and so I really looked up to like Christy Yamaguchi and a lot of the figure skaters because I feel like they're, you know, when I was younger, like I feel like women were just kind of like starting to really, really break into the sports. And I loved the Serena Venus Williams sisters. They were incredible, like especially playing doubles. For me, when I was younger, just seeing like these strong women in sports was really, really special. And just to like see strong women compete, and with figure skating to see women compete like doing these incredible acts of like athletic like prowess, you know, flinging themselves up into the air, but also being very feminine about it, like, you know, wearing dresses, and for that feminine strength to really be celebrated. um, you know, you can be beautiful and strong and powerful and athletic. That, being a female athlete doesn't mean you have to be like any certain which way. That, you know, being a female athlete can be, you can present yourself, you can express yourself in any sort of like, in any sort of way. And that's really special too.
What would you tell your younger self looking back on your Olympic career and your career as a rower?
I would tell her, to, it's so funny because I feel like now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, what would my younger self do? I was like, so now I'm like, oh, what would I tell her? I would tell her, yeah, you're good. You're on the right path. Like, just keep at it. Stress a little less, stress less. Trust yourself, trust yourself. That's what I would tell her. Trust yourself. I think a lot of times younger athletes instinctively know what's right for their bodies or what's kind of like right for their paths. And you know, I'm really grateful that I've had a lot of really amazing coaches, but, you know, not every coach out there knows what they're doing. So I would just tell younger athletes, you know, trust your body, trust your gut, trust your instincts. Coaches aren't, you know, supreme life forms. So you need to just like advocate for yourself and, yeah, listen to your body.
What are some of your future plans in the sport of rowing?
Yeah, I'm still lucky enough to be training. So I am once again an Olympic hopeful for Paris, hopeful for the World Championships this year in Serbia. Still currently training out of the Princeton Olympic Training Center, but we've been really, really, really blessed here where I'm calling you from our new indoor training location. And we have a new coach this year, Jessie Folia, who's absolutely amazing, and our high performance director, Yosi, who's also amazing. So this Olympic cycle, there's been a lot of change since the last Olympic cycle. And, you know, I'm really, really grateful for everything that our past coaches have done for me. Tom and Laurel were absolutely amazing. But this Olympic cycle, there's a lot of fresh energy, fresh ideas, new ways of doing things. And I'm really excited to be part of this change and part of this positive movement.
Of course, what are some of the things that you're doing now to prepare for that 2024 Paris Olympics?
Oh, well, after this call, I'm going to be doing 90 minutes of steady state. So very looking forward to that. That's going to be great. Yeah, we just like practice every day. You know, we lift 2 to 3 times a week. I do physical therapy 2 to 3 times a week. I feel like that's something I would really stress to younger athletes is like doing physical therapy and kind of like more of core and strengthening exercises is really important. I feel like people really stress like, oh, you should stretch. And it's like, well, maybe you should also do like more strengthening and core stuff too. So that's actually really I think people really don't people underestimate how important like core and physical therapy and those strengthening things are in terms of like maintaining injury prevention and that kind of sort of thing. And then we're on the water every morning in boats, which I love, which is obviously my favorite part, is like, doing the sport, doing the boats, rowing the boats. And then we do like indoor cross training every afternoon. And then we're trying to row now a couple afternoons a week too, now that the weather is starting to get a bit better here in Jersey. But, there's always a chance of 20-mile-per-hour winds. Like, what are you going to do? We do the best we can.
What advice would you give those college athletes that are looking to compete in collegiate rowing?
To compete in collegiate rowing, I think it's really important to remember that there are many levels of collegiate rowing. I think a lot of people think of it's like this all or nothing thing of like, oh, you're either a D1 national champion or like, like you can't do it. And it's like, there are so many different levels of collegiate rowing that if you want to row in college, you can find a team or a club program that is the right fit for you. There's D3 programs which compete which practice 10 hours a week. There are club programs that, may not even have mandatory practices. There are D2 programs, and then there are D1 programs that are competitive, and there are D1 programs that are really more focused on the holistic student athlete experience. And so I think it's a matter of, if in your heart you really want to row in college and someone's telling you you're too short, you don't have the right body type, this or that, I would tell them that you absolutely should row in college and that you can find a team that has the fit for you. And also that, my best friends in college were in the 3V. They were in the 3V and the 4V. And they inspired me so much of their level of perseverance and hard work and commitment and loyalty because, they were never going to make the 1V. They didn't have the right body type. No matter how hard they worked, they were never going to make the 1V. And yet they showed up to practice every day. They tried their hardest and, they made that 3V and that 4V go as fast as they could, which pushed the 2V, which pushed the 1V. And I would really say to a lot of people that the mark of a fast team is how fast their 3V is. How fast a team is going to be based on the level of commitment and speed that 3V provides, because it just pushes the whole team. Like they're the heart of the team. And so, if you're looking to row in college and you're like, oh, like I'm not like this or that, like if you have the heart, like you should absolutely go for it. Because at the end of the day, it's just like really all about loving the sport and having fun with it. Like if you're having fun, like, yeah, keep at it.
What advice would you give those collegiate rowers that are looking to get into professional rowing and one day make the Olympics?
Yeah, I think the thing that I'll say, and it doesn't sound, this is kind of like a twofold thing, but you have to be realistic while also you have to bet on yourself. So you have to be realistic about where you are in that kind of like specific moment of like, when I first joined the team, I was pretty slow in the erg and I had to be realistic about like what splits I needed to pull. And then it's like a kind of a slow process of getting better, but also like believing in yourself where it's like, yeah, I might be slow now, but I know that I have the potential to get faster and that I have that kind of like upward limit. So it's kind of balancing like the realism of like where you might actually be upon like graduation or in college, and then still believing in your upward trajectory.
What advice would you give those first-time Olympians looking to compete or even multiple-time Olympians?
And this is, okay, two things. One, everyone is still always a student of their sport. If you're still competing, or you should be, I would say, like, if you like think that you know everything there is to do and that you've like, it's kind of like, why are you still like, everyone is trying to get better. Like no one is a finished product and there's still ways that everyone ever could get better. Like, LeBron James is still out there like shooting hoops every day. Like he's not like just showing up to games being like, I'm the best. Like, yeah, he's the best, but he's not like, and so everyone is still a student of their sport, no matter how long, no matter how many Olympic medals they've had. Megan Musanikidi, she's now going for her 4th Olympics. And she's still like, okay, coach, like, what should I do better? And like, she's still like out there being like, what are things that I can do to do better? Because the second part of my advice is that, what got you here isn't going to get you there. So it's kind of like, what I did to get to Tokyo isn't going to get me to Paris. So it's kind of like, regrouping, trying new things, doubling down on the things that work, but, kind of forging ahead with, just forging ahead.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
Oh yeah, feel free. I love, again, messages from people. I'm always happy to chat. I'm on Instagram at the numbers 14 Salmons, and that's SALMONS. And then we also have an Instagram for the team account called Women in the Boat. And that's kind of just like all of the women here at the Princeton Training Center. And we also have a TikTok for Women in the Boat. But that's still a little bit in the process. So we're mostly on Instagram. And we'd love to hear from you all.
Thank you again, Regina Salmon, for your interview, and best of luck in your future as a U.S. rower Olympian.
Okay, thank you so much, Brandon. Thank you so much for having me. This was such a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Regina Salmon, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thanks. Have a great one.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.